وذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين.
I'm going to look, inshallah, before I go into the section there, as has been my habit this class, to look at some verses. This time from Surah Al-A'raf, which is a Meccan surah, and it's named Al-A'raf, which means the heights or the high place. There's a place in Granada, if anybody's been to the Alhambra Palace, there's a place they called Khenerife, which is up, it overlooks the palace. And in Spanish they call it Khenerife. And the Arabic is Jannatul Arif, because the Arif is the one who looks over something. So Al-A'raf are high points or high places. They're the heights. And every surah in the Qur'an is named after a word mentioned in the Qur'an. So this is a word that comes in I think the 46th verse in the chapter. Al-A'raf talks about the people on the heights. This also deals with one of the stories that is repeated in the Qur'an in different places. And there's a reason why the Qur'an repeats stories in different places. The Qur'an, as you know, and people who've read this book, and this is a problem that some Western people have with the book, is not a linear book. It's not a book that begins like Genesis in the beginning and ends with the historical death of Moses. And so it's not a linear book like other books. And the Qur'an begins that ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, that book or this book, لِلتَّعْظِيم, to exalt it, to magnify it. And what the Prophet ﷺ was given is called al-Kitab, the matrix of the books. al-Kitab, the Qur'an it's like a matrix. It's always coming up with new things. Imam al-Busayri says, آيَةُ مِنَ الرَّحْمَنِ مُحْدَثَةٌ قَدِيمَةٌ سِيفَةَ الْمَوْصُوفِ بِالْقِدَمِ. These are signs from the merciful that are emerging right now. Muhdatha, they're happening right now. Qadima, and then they're uncreated at the same time. So it's one of the paradoxes of the Qur'an is that the book is always revealing it. That's why it is the ongoing miracle of the Prophet, because it's an ongoing revelation. It's always revealing itself. And when you read it, and the more you read it, things will come out, and you'll actually hear things in the Qur'an, even if you've read it 1,000 times or 10,000 times or 40,000 times, like Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, there'll be verses that you won't notice. And they'll only be noticed at the time when you're meant to notice them. So you can read, I've read a surah probably hundreds of times, if not in the thousands, and I noticed an ayah this year in it that I'd never seen before. Like it just, where did that come from? As if it literally just came into the surah. So the Qur'an, the stories, the reason they suddenly come in is, why is it mentioning Moses and Pharaoh right here? Well, there is a reason. It's emerging at that moment because it's related to the entire book. And that's why the Qur'an is like this perfect equation that if you take any part out, the equation is, it's no longer, it can't stand. And that's why somebody who masters the Qur'an, all they have to hear is a letter that's not there. And they immediately, and you can see this with Hufal, they just hear a letter and it's, to them, it's like a break. It's like this break. Why is that? You can read English and you can know things inside out in language. I've memorized things, but I have to go back and look and check and see, is that the way it was? And whereas with the Qur'an, it's not like that. It literally, a hafidh knows. There's khalal, what's called khalal. If something's taken out, it's like a block taken out of a structure. The structure can't stand with it because every verse in the Qur'an is like a cornerstone to the whole Qur'an. So this story, which is told a few times in the Qur'an, is the story of Adam and Hawa. Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam are our parents. These are the two parents of Banu Adam. We're called Banu Adam, which is the children of Adam. And the class today is about children. And how this all started is a really interesting story. How did we get here? Because it's still going on, the story. I mean, this story that happened here, this primal story, is still going on. It's still being played out again and again. And it's in Surah Al-A'raf here. The story is a story about two creatures, Adam and Iblees. And really three, because Hawa is there and she's spoken to in the same with Huma. You know, Allah uses the dual again and again in this story. And they're both very important. And God, nadahuma, He spoke to the both of them. So He actually spoke to both of these two people. Now, this other character is Iblees. There's a khilaf about Iblees, about his nature. The dominant opinion is that he was a jinn, but he was allowed into the court of the angels, this angelic court. Now, these angels were told by God to bow down to Adam. And that sujood is not a prostration. It's not actually putting your head on the ground. It was a type of ta'zeem, which was more like an inhina. It was bowing. And it could have been sujood because even prior to the Prophet's mission, there was not a prohibition about making sujood to other people. But the Prophet ﷺ was prohibited from making sujood to anyone else, male or female. That it's haram to actually bow down to any human being with belief. I mean, you shouldn't do it in any case, but you might have to get down to help somebody with their shoe or some. There's a lot of reasons why you could actually do the physical act. That's not what's haram. What's haram is to actually bow down thinking that those people have any divine quality or anything worthy of that type of exaltation. But we know that some of the Sahaba actually fell down. One prostrated to the Prophet ﷺ, and he forbade him from doing that. But it has to be with the belief, obviously, that it was shirk. So Iblis is told to bow down, and he's the only one that doesn't do it, because all of them did it, except Iblis. فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. And that's why some of the ulama say the illa, the mustathna here, is the mustathna minhu, is the angels. In other words, the exception, he's accepted from the angels. So in order to be accepted from the angels, it would be that he was an angel also. But in Arabic, they have an interesting thing. You can say all of them, all the men got up except the donkey. In English, we wouldn't really say that. Whereas in Arabic, they have that type of separation between the subject and what's being accepted from it. So it's an interesting debate. But he says, قَالَ مَا مَنَعَكَ أَلَّا تَسْجُدْ. What has hindered you from not falling prostrate? إِذْ أَمَرْتُكَ, because I told you to do this. قَالَ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ. I'm better than him, which is a very interesting statement. Because some of the ulama say this is the first wrong action ever. And it's a belief of superiority. It's a belief of superiority of another creature. So he said, I'm better than him. And then, خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ. Then he gives the reason. This is his logic of why he is superior. You created me from fire, وَخَلَقْتُهُ مِن طِينٍ. And you created him from earth and water. I'm fire and air. He's earth and water. I'm better than him. What was the superiority here? What superiority did he see? Material, right? It's medda. He's looking at the actual substance of what we are made of. Now, what is unique about Iblis and Adam? That's part of it, but where does that come from? And what did Allah give both Iblis and Adam? They have this conscious ruh. They have this conscious knowledge of God that other creatures don't have, whether they're made of fire, earth, water, whatever they're made of. So Iblis was looking at the outward of the situation and he's saying, I'm better than him. Why are you making me bow down to somebody that I'm better than? This is his logic. And there's a lot of people that fall into that type of reasoning in the world, and it causes immense problems in the world. قَالَ فَأَهْبِطْ, then go down. Now this is a command to him. مِنْهَا فَمَا يَكُونُ لَكَ أَن تَتَكَبَّرْ فِيهَا. It is not for thee to show pride here. In other words, you're in the divine presence. This isn't the place for pride. If you're aware of God, you can't be in a state of pride. And therefore, he was cast out of this presence because the two can't go together. And then he says, فَخْرُجْ إِنَّكَ مِنَ الصَّاغِرِينَ. Get out of here because you are the saghir. You're not better, you're worse. You're the humiliated one because of your pride. Because of your pride, you've put yourself under the thing that you thought you were over. So the actual thinking that you were over this other creature has put you under that creature by default. So go out. And then he says, قَالَ أَنظُرْنِي إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Give me some reprieve. Give me some reprieve until the ba'ath. And this is a proof that Iblees believed in the ba'ath, he believed in the angels, he believed in Allah, the qadr, he believed in everything. His kufr is called kufr al-isyan. It's the disbelief of disobedience. Because it's not the same as if you're in the divine presence and you disobey Allah. It's like somebody in Mecca who does something, a kabira in Mecca. It's unimaginable to any person with an ounce of faith in their heart that you could do a kabira, a major wrong action in Mecca. But there are people that do that. So, قَالَ إِنَّكَ مِنَ الْمُنظَرِينَ. You've got this reprieve. قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي. This is really key here. بِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي, now, because you led me astray. Right? So he's blaming, now he blames Allah. This is the beauty of Iblees. I mean, he's just, that's what Fakhruddin al-Razi says. Look at this foolish intellect. First, he says, why didn't you do it? And he says, because I can't do that, I'm better than him. Then he says, Bima aghwaytani, you made me go astray by telling me to do it in the first place. Because I couldn't do it, you said do it. And so it's your fault. It's not my fault, it's your fault. See, he's blaming God for his problems. بِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ. I will now lurk in ambush for them. In other words, these humans. Because it's really their fault. You told me to do this thing, so it's both of your faults. You told me to do something that I couldn't do. And the reason I couldn't do it is because he wasn't worthy of it. So he's got two adversaries here. He's angry at God and he's angry at Adam.